Welcome back, everybody, to episode 24 of Away from the Keyboards, the show that makes productivity its number one priority. Our guest today is Christoph Hartmann, the founder and CEO of DoneThat, an application that helps you track where you spend your time so that you can spend it on what really matters. So if you're curious about an AI tool that is not as intrusive as Microsoft Recall, this episode is for you. And if you are just curious about some of Christoph's conference hacks, we also got you covered. So sit back, relax, and enjoy another great episode. Without any further ado from my side, Christoph, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
We spoke about it a while back, around August, and since then I've been trying to put this episode together so that we could deep dive. You have a very curious background, and I'd like to know more about how it all started from you. You went from Japan to Chicago, Berlin, Amsterdam. How has this journey been so far with you?
Yeah, sure. So let me look at it from maybe like how I ended up in coding and where I am now. And I think for me, coding and software development was also always like a tool and less of a craft. I like always wanted to get stuff done, and maybe that's also why it took me so many places. So I did a bit of like software engineering in high school, but never really was very good at it. And then studied cognitive science. It's like a mix of computer science, robotics, psychology, philosophy of mind. The question is a bit like how does the brain work, and can we simulate it? It was like AI, because before we had AI, we still did like logic programming and stuff that nobody uses anymore, I think. But of course, to do all this, you need to learn computer science. So I had some computer science classes. I got super curious into robotics because I felt like, if you really want to understand intelligence, it kind of has to work in the real world. So I took some robotics classes, and eventually that led me to a half year in Japan, where I worked in some robotics labs, trying to get machine learning to run on robots with like some like super low level C++ real-time Linux setup. And that was super fun, but it was also quite frustrating because it just only worked half the time. Robots break all the time. It's like I'm like not a robotics engineer at heart. The software was fun, the hardware was a bit of a nightmare. So from there, then I decided to kind of go more in the theory. I did a PhD in computational neuroscience, and again, like coding is a tool again, right? Like I learned a lot of Python because I had to like simulate a lot of neural networks. This then led me to do a data science like internship fellowship in Chicago. It was called Data Science for Social Good. And we tried to basically apply data science tools to real world problems. And in my case, we tried to, it was a fun setup. We tried to optimize where to send ambulances based on kind of the dispatch calls you got. And like we had some conversations with like all the ambulance people and the firemen. It's like, okay, look, what do you think could be interesting features to predict like where people would be needed? And they were obsessed with the moon phase and thought like somehow like there would be like more craziness happening in like new moon and stuff. So we did all the math. We actually modeled the moon phase, but it turns out the only thing it would predict was a little bit if you would be bitten by wild animals, more or less. I guess they're like more active when the moon is out or something. But that was a bit of a fun detour. Then I think what I learned there is that like data science is like super fun, but often the problem is somewhere else. Like, of course, you can like optimize things with machine learning, but in the case of the Chicago example, they should have just, instead of investing in a data science team, invested in one more ambulance, and the whole thing would have been solved. So that's why I then went to BCG. I did management consulting. I was like, hey, let me actually try to understand how like the business world works, how like people make decisions, management, all that stuff. Did that from Berlin and did very little computer science in that time, very little engineering. Well, it was very fun. I learned a lot. I also learned that I didn't want to do that for the rest of my life, as I think many consultants. And from there, then ended up in Amsterdam at a startup. Initially, I set up the data science team again. And I think again, I came to a similar conclusion that like, okay, like data science is interesting. Like what we tried to do was to improve health insurance in Kenya. We were kind of building insurance backend systems, and the data science part there is trying to automate claims, trying to predict outbreaks of diseases, stuff like this. But again, where the data is coming from is was to me much more interesting than like doing something on the data. So I eventually ended up being the CTO and managing the software engineering, managing the product, trying to build better core insurance systems. That's a bit like my journey. And then eventually from there, I started playing around with startups and started trying to do my own thing.
That's so cool. And I was thinking about what you just mentioned about the phases of the moons and the wild animals. But probably can predict more if someone is going to become a werewolf or not and get bit by a wild wolf.
Problem is there isn't a code for being a werewolf, so we didn't see it in the data, but I'm sure it existed somewhere.
Yeah, so no need to stockpile on silver just in case during those times.
Not yet, I think, not yet.
Cool. And yeah, as you mentioned that you recently you moved to Amsterdam and you have been working on these startups. And one of the reasons why I read this, I saw what you've been doing with DoneThat. So I'm curious about it. Tell me more about it. What was the idea behind it?
Sure. So I think was always curious to like do startups or like do something myself. And I actually, like, while preparing for this podcast, I was thinking back a bit. I was like, actually, already during my studies, I tried to build some kind of social platform on the web, but it was like hard. Like building web apps back then, like it was hard. I wasn't good enough, so it like completely failed. And then during my job here in Amsterdam at this startup doing health insurance, I also like on the side did a side project where I tried to build like another social app. And that, of course, also completely failed. But I think like on the way, I got the taste for like building things is really fun, right? Like I once heard the quote that if you just look around in the world, every single thing you see was built by somebody, right? It's like somebody's passion project, and that like has some magic to it. So I always wanted to create and like also do like my own little passion projects. And then the story with DoneThat is I joined a startup incubator earlier this year in January, and we basically all went in with like hundreds of ideas, and then like very systematically went through all the ideas, looked at like where is like actually some pain, who would actually pay for this, what actually like solves problems, right? Like if you solve a problem and people are willing to give you money for it, then there's something there. Most ideas, unfortunately, don't work that way. And the idea for DoneThat was born out of a bit of personal frustration. I think everybody has like sat in a meeting and was like, okay, like we're wasting our time here. Like what are we doing with like 20 people in this meeting? Everybody's just like talking around and nothing is really happening. And I had this frustration not just in meetings, but like in day to day, right? I was already like through my life always very kind of like not productivity obsessed, but interested in productivity. And like seeing, for example, working in BCG, like these big corporates that are like completely inefficient. And you just look at what people do and you're like, how can these companies be profitable? That makes no sense. And then, of course, also being a manager at a startup, I often like had one-on-ones with people who are like thinking about, okay, like where do we actually want to spend your time? And where is it going right now? Can we prioritize better? And like for money, we all do budgets. We all kind of really know where the money is going. But for time, even though it's almost more important, it's much less of a habit for people to like think about how they invest their time. And I felt there was something there, and basically thought, okay, like I tried some tools doing this before. Like there's like some time tracking tools, like some automated tools, but they were all pretty bad. It's like I never could get into the habit of actually tracking my time. But with AI now, I was like, maybe this is the time where actually time tracking can be fully automated and can actually be useful. Right? So the idea for DoneThat was we build a little app that just takes screenshots of your screen all the time and put these into LLMs, and the LLMs will be smart enough to figure out what's actually going on. And based on this, do like a summary of where your time is going, summarize your day, coach you a little bit, kind of build all these like use cases on top of it. But the core idea was AI plus screenshots, probably good enough to understand your work. And this can help you in optimize your time, invest your time better, work less at the end of the day.
And that's a really cool thing, because when it comes to waste of time, like you spoke, like the endless meetings, especially if you are in the consultancy world, you know how it is to end up in a 3-hour meeting that could have been an email or something like that. But it's one of the things that we often forget is that almost everything, it's knobs that you can turn around, like you can make more money, you can learn new things, but one thing you cannot do is get more time. Like the day has 24 hours, and as a friend of mine used to say when he was in the military, the day has 24 hours and the night has 24 more. I think that's only a military thing, but for us it's like the day is 24 hours, when most of the time when you work is like, if you spend 8 hours asleep, you spend 8 hours of work. It's 1/3 of your life is spent at work. If you can optimize that to do what really matters instead of just some kind of boring tasks or keeping up in the meetings. Yeah.
Of these 8 hours, I would argue probably you are not even productive those 8 hours, right? I think if I look at my day, like the really good work I probably do in like 3 or 4 hours, like the really focused, like software engineering or like coming up with new growth strategies or whatever. And then there's maybe 2 hours of busy work and doing emails and whatever. And that's basically it. Like I can of course work more. I can look like I do more, but the real like good time that we have isn't that much. And often we just mindlessly start our day doing email and then like wake up 2 hours later and it's like all the good time is gone already. And yeah, this is something I want to help people be more aware of and just be able to plan better, structure their days better.
Yeah, and you by having that, you can really understand if someone is more productive during the morning, more productive during the evening, and based on that, kind of help them guide. Because we can all have our misconceptions or preconceptions of, oh no, I'm really a morning person. I really like to do stuff in the morning. But one thing you cannot argue against is data. And if the data tells you that, yeah, you think you're a morning person, but in the afternoon is where you really can focus and do your work, maybe that's where you should invest your time. So that's curious. And how are you approaching this? For example, when measuring things like developer productivity, what are the metrics that you are looking on?
So back when I was a CTO at this last startup, I tried to find different ways to measure developer productivity. And it's a bit of a holy grail that's, I think, impossible to reach. But like of course, the board of the company, the investors, they were always asking these questions of like, why do we need so many developers? Like, what are they doing all day? Can't they like work faster, deliver things better? And they always hope there's some kind of intuitive, easy metric. Like, I don't know, like the stupid one is lines of code written, right? That's of course, like nobody should measure lines of code written, especially in the age of AI. Like that's just gonna like end in complete chaos. But like the question is like, what do you measure then, right? Like you can also, the other end of the spectrum is you just don't measure anything, you just trust people, right? And that's like one way of doing things. But I feel like the best is a middle ground, right? Like only trusting and like only being hands off. I think it works with some people, but even for myself, right? I like structure. Like I now like to know what expectations are from, at least when I was a CTO, from my board, right? Or from the person managing me. And I think the metric that we found most useful at the end of the day is like how well could we achieve what we plan to do, right? Like if I asked my software engineering teams and they're like at the beginning of the quarter, okay, like we are pretty sure we can deliver these 5 epics or these 3 other things or like so many story points, like kind of depends on how you want to do it. But the important thing is both of us agree, right? Like the developers agree and I think it's a good idea. And then together we can measure, okay, like at the end of the quarter, did we actually achieve what we had planned to do? And can we somehow quantify like, is the output or the impact going higher or lower? And again, this is basically how well can you stick to a plan? And this like very quickly sounds like waterfall, and that's not the idea. The idea is like how well can we, also in agile, right? Like how good can we stick to our predictions in terms of output? And this is like, again, I think where time tracking comes in super useful, because often, you make these great plans and you think only in like happy paths, and then at the end of the day, like that's not how it works. So like having a history and going in and being like, okay, like last time developing a feature took this long, right? Last time we spent so and so much time preparing for something. Like last month we spent 30% like fixing bugs. We should probably also factor this in for the next month. It's basically like giving you the data you talked before about like having the accurate data about like morning person and night person, right? Like this is giving you accurate data for where is your time going? How much can you actually expect from yourself to deliver to kind of prevent this over promising that often happens.
Yeah, that's really cool. Especially if you're working on some tasks like you were saying. Like if we go even a bit back, that's how we used to work in one of my teams. We always used to say we don't work on schedules, we work on objectives, right? Like we know that we want to achieve something at a certain moment in time. We think it's achievable. Like I don't care if you work 8 hours a day or if you work 2 hours a day. We want to achieve that thing. If we arrive at the end, we achieve that thing. That's perfect. That's what we wanted to do. And I think with this time tracking, what you get is you get the opportunity, as you mentioned, to check what are the time wasters, the things that come and move you away from that path. Because we all know that every time that you change a task, you have context switching that has an impact on the brain. Like you need to figure out, oh, damn, what was at what point was I really doing that thing? Things like pull requests or bug tracking, or if they are not planned, they are things that really have a negative impact on your work and day-to-day work. And that goes back also to what you said. Yeah, it's not really waterfall. And I always like this quote from Eisenhower, where I think it's Eisenhower: plans are useless, but planning is everything. It's all about getting that structure in place and really knowing where you want to go. You don't need to be strict about it, but yeah, I think the most important part is when you fail, you have this capability of looking back and having this kind of extra data to bring into a retrospective and, hey, we didn't count that we are going to spend 30% of our time doing bug tracking. This was a really big problem for us.
I think another perspective that I learned while working on this was also, you mentioned before, you would say like we manage on outcomes and it doesn't matter like how long it takes. Like if you achieve the thing, if it takes 1 hour or 10 hours, like we achieved the thing, right? I think that's one way of doing it. But at least for myself, when I manage myself, right, I started like this. I was like, okay, like this week I want to achieve this, 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 and this. And next week I'm going to like get 100 new users and this feature. And I, at least from my feelings, I felt like a lot of pressure, right? I put all this pressure on me all the time. It's like achieve this, achieve this, achieve this. Whereas if you accept that you only have so and so many productive hours per day, you could also turn this around and say, okay, my goal is I want to have 4 hours of coding today, right? I'm going to trust myself that I'm going to like spend it on the right feature or whatever. But then all of a sudden I don't have to set myself output goals anymore, where like I don't maybe always have full control, right? Like maybe it's more complex than I thought, or I forgot something, or I have a dependency on somebody else. But I just manage on like how much time do I put in, and this, at least for me, like reduced guilt and anxiety and like all the negative emotions. Of course, there's a failure mode there, right? If you only manage on how much time you spend and lose track of where you actually want to go, then you're also going to end up like over engineering and not doing the right things, right? But like at least for me, it was a perspective I didn't have before that helped me to manage myself just a bit more healthy.
That's super cool. And before we continue moving on, we have a recurrent segment in the show that is called the Pass It Forward, where a guest passes forward a question to another guest. And the question to you came from Nasir. And Nasir asked, in a parallel universe, if you didn't end up where you are today, where did you want to end it up?
That's a good question. So I think in my life, I've always had like a balance of like two different personas. One persona is like this nerdy engineer, and the other persona is a bit more of a like explorative hippie. Like I did like a lot of Burning Man festivals. I don't know, like I'm always like out to like explore new stuff. I did the Mongol Rally 2 years ago, which is a thing where you get a really shitty car and you drive it from Prague to Kazakhstan, like stuff like this, right? It's like always a bit in balance, but I could imagine it could have also like gone the other way, and I would have just like followed that path more, and then probably I would have ended up in the parallel universe as maybe more of a coach or something, or more of a people person. Like both of my parents were coaches, and my father was a priest. I think there's like a bit of an influence there where I also could have ended up. It would have been completely different, right? But I like that about the magic of life, right? Like it's often like no matter which decision you take, it's like it's gonna be an interesting life that you end up living. But yeah. would be fun to restart like a little computer game and try the other path, right?
And who knows, maybe the other path is already being executed in the parallel universe, anyways, where we are having this podcast asking the same exact question, and you're saying exactly the opposite. Maybe I would have up as a founder of my own company. That would be so cool. Yeah, great answer. Loved it. There's another subject that I wanted to talk with you about because one of the things that I've seen recently, as you were joining a conference and talking about DoneThat and showing it to other companies, was the conferences hacks that you kind of figured out, and they were just beautiful. How did you come up with this? Was it something that you thought about it yourself? You saw someone else gave you an inspiration on that, or it was like just spur of the moment?
So I think one thing I underestimated when building, and I think that's the case for like every technical person who starts building something, is how hard growth and marketing is. And especially for an app like what I'm building, it's all about trust, right? Like it's like very sensitive data that I'm processing, but like literally like taking screenshots of your screen and feeding them into AI. Like if you don't trust me, this is not going to work, right? So then the next question is, how do you build trust, right? Both in me as a person having the right intentions, and in like my skills as a software engineer, that this doesn't have like a whole bunch of security flaws, and in like that this app actually delivers on the promise of being a useful tool, right? And talking with people in person is one of the best ways to build this trust, right? Because you just like, if I'm a random person posting on Reddit about this, like this is not going to work, right? If I talk with you face to face, I can like answer your questions. I can see your misconceptions or where you have trouble trusting me. So for me, it was always from the very beginning, is like conferences is probably a good place to find users and to market, at least in the beginning. And then being the optimizing nerd that I am, I was like, okay, like how can I get the most out of conferences? And I think my best example for conferences is the effective altruism conferences. It's a bit of a niche, but it's like very nerdy do-gooders, and they're all very like optimization focused. So they have figured out how to do the best conferences. They have like an app where you can upfront book as many one-on-ones as you want with people. And I mean, a lot of conferences have these. Nobody usually uses them, but like these people are like religious about them. So like when I go over to conferences with them, I've just been at one maybe a month ago. I booked like 40 to 50 one-on-ones over the course of 2 to 3 days. And it's like super productive, like very draining, but like very productive, right? And I was like, okay, like how can I replicate this at other conferences? Like how can I get into this like one-on-one mode and meet a lot of people? And I tried so many things. I think the thing that worked the least was like printing a funny t-shirt and hoping that people will talk to you. That is not the thing that's going to work. I tried hacking a conference app. Basically, like I was at this conference where they had like a super bad app, and like you could just like I used ChatGPT and it's like, just write me a Python script so I can automatically spam and message every single person who like looks interesting. The script worked. Nobody responded because the app didn't send notifications because it was like so bad that like you couldn't even see that you got a message. I think for other conferences that might be a good idea, but you risk, of course, like getting kicked out. What did work was, for a lot of conferences, one way or the other, you can get a list of attendees before. It could be just the list of speakers. It could be the people in that app. It could be like there's like ways. And then just taking the list, segmenting it, and like reaching out to these people up front, right? On LinkedIn, on email. Of course, only the ones that are relevant to you. Otherwise, it's spam, right? But if it's relevant, like they'll appreciate getting an email up front or LinkedIn up front, and then schedule a few meetings. I think that worked quite well. What also worked, especially for like low budget, is every conference I'm at, like somebody's not going to show up. Like there's always like an empty stand with like a sign and like, who's this person? Like they're not here. And last time I just set up shop myself on like one of those stands. I was like this is unused. Like nobody's going to complain. I just like opened my laptop, had a few business cards, and started talking to people. And that was surprisingly effective. Like so many people came up. They're all bored. And I think the good thing about DoneThat is it applies to basically anybody, right? So like no matter who you are, when you like walk up, we can have a useful conversation. One last hack, like related, is be a speaker, right? Because then of course people are going to be interested in you. How do you become a speaker? Most conferences are looking for people, just like message them, and like it's a bit of work. But the speakers often also get a guest pass, right? So they can like bring a friend. most speakers don't have friends, or or their friends just don't want to go to a random conference with them. So same for me. I'm speaking at a conference in 2 weeks. I'm like super excited for it. But like I just don't have any friends in Hamburg who are also developers who like want to join me for this developer conference, right? So one thing that turned out to be super effective is just message a bunch of speakers and it's like, hey, I'm like a struggling young startup entrepreneur. I don't have money. Can I please have your ticket? And like I think if you like talk about it nicely and make it fun, it works. Like from the last conference I went to, it took me 3 hours. I messaged like 8 of the speakers, got an answer, had a ticket. So yeah, get a free ticket, take over that abandoned stand, and reach out to people up front. And I think it's going to be a very productive conference.
That is so fun because I was recently also in a TechX, and as a speaker I got like I think it was 20 tickets that I could give out. Most of them were for colleagues and friends as well. But yeah, if someone had reached out and said, "Hey, by the way, I see that you're speaking there, and I'm wanting to attend, but I don't have a ticket." Yeah, for sure, you could have one of the tickets. So that's a really nice hack, and if you make it fun enough, yeah, for sure, someone is going to reply back, and it's just a probability game, right? If you find 10 interesting speakers, there's a high chance one of them will give you a ticket.
And nobody messaged you, right? Nobody messaged me so far. I think it's just, of course, if I would get like 20 messages every day to like, can I get you a ticket? Like this would be a different conversation. But I think very, very few people do this. So it's still a nice thing to try.
Yeah, it's a really nice a nice hack. And going back again to our main topic, talking a little bit about DoneThat and growing a company. One of the things that I've got also from previous guests is that they mentioned that one of the hardest things that they do when they are hiring people is getting those first 20 employees, and yeah, because you're really trying to get the culture of the company even more than just the technical aspects of the company. So what are your thoughts around that?
I mean, for DoneThat, the people in the company is there's one employee, and that's me. I'm looking right now at recruiting a co-founder, and that's probably the most important decision. And it's similar with the first employees, right? Like at this last startup I was at, I first recruited my own team and then did recruiting for the whole technical staff. And I agree. It's like the first person you hire is the most important, then the second probably, then the second important, and so on, because it sets culture so much, right? Like whoever you get in first will then influence who else wants to join. It will influence the how you work together, what you work on, how much you work. And there's this saying, it's like smart people like attract more smart people. Like one of the reasons I think why Elon Musk's company works so well is like he just sets the bar so high, and some people want a high bar, right? Like so they'll end up there, and the other people just won't apply. Should everybody do it like him? Probably not, but it just like shows how important like recruiting the early people is. And then of course like another thing that's hard is like you have a super early startup that can pay a lot of money, so you have to pitch on growth and you have to pitch on the product. And to be honest, I think the smartest thing you can do in your career is join a startup very early on that's growing very fast, right? It's hard to find those, but you will see so much in so quick time. You will grow so fast. Yeah, that's, I think, the thing you can use to pitch to get employees. If it's credible, right? Like if you actually have the data to back up that this thing will grow, and yeah, if they believe in the product, then that could be a great fit.
And what is, for example, one of the biggest challenges that you were not expecting in this journey of building DoneThat that you had to face?
I tried to build another app before, and already there I learned that yeah, the product isn't the problem. The people and the growth and the marketing is, at least for me, right? Like, but of course, I think I didn't internalize it enough. And I, again, in this startup, I think over-indexed a bit on building a great product. And I, like, even here could have focused more on growth very early on. And that's probably like with one advice I would give everybody is like, don't worry about the idea too much. Don't worry about the product too much. Like really worry about the people who will pay you for this at the end of the day. Like talk to them from day one, figure out their problems, and try to support them on their way and find a scalable way to find more of them, right? I did this with DoneThat in the beginning. I basically, before building anything, I reached out to like a bunch of people on LinkedIn, pitched them the idea. I was like, is there some interest here? Like, would somebody buy this? And got a signal very early that they actually would. But then I kind of made this mistake of just abandoning them and only building. I was like, okay, like this is validated. Let's go and build this thing. And what I, of course, should have done is like work much more closely with them. But still, like I had within 1 month, like a super MVP prototype with a Stripe integration, and basically forced every single person who wanted to use this to already get a Stripe, like super cheap, but like a subscription, to basically validate. It's like, is there interest here? Is there market here? And then work super closely with your users to build something that's actually useful for them. But yeah, marketing, growth, building trust. I think with every new thing I do, I learn more and more how important it is, and that this is like the primary thing to work on. Actually, like when I was working for BCG, so like this management consulting company, in the very first day there was a training where they asked everybody, what do you think is more important? Having the right answer or having the right people who can then implement that answer? And me being the naive guy who just finished his PhD, I was like, obviously the right answer is the more important thing. Like if you have the right people, but they then implement the wrong thing, this is gonna get you nowhere. And I definitely came around this. It's like you want to have a good enough answer, you want to have a good enough product, but like having a growth channel, having the trust of the people is so much more important. Everything else you can iterate on later.
Yeah, that's so fun because that's exactly what Nasir was also talking about in the previous podcast. That those were a couple of the lessons learned that he got from also building his previous companies. And yeah, it's one of those testaments that building a company and then having to scratch it, it's not really a failure. It's something that will give you a lot of information that you can then apply to build your next company, and probably won't get that if you never build one. So everyone needs to go through the same trials and tribulations almost. I always like to tell people, like, it's when you're a kid, it doesn't matter how many times you're going to tell a kid that the fire burns. Every kid is going to try to put their hand in a flame and oh yes, it's hot, it burns. Okay, now I know. Like, some things are not knowledge that can be shared from person to person. It's like experience is very crucial.
You can't read a book about skiing and then expect to be able to ski, right? And the same way is almost like with anything else. Like I love podcasts. I listen to so many podcasts and read like so many books about like building startups. At the end of the day, I like still did all the mistakes everybody warned me for, right? Like it's like experience is a different way of learning.
Exactly. And looking into DoneThat and how that journey is going, because one of the things that has been talked about over the past years as well is the capability of Microsoft Recall, and which is a bit similar, but it does have one of the features that for me I don't like, which is trusting Microsoft. That's the big problem already to start with. My question is more, what kind of segment are you trying to approach with DoneThat? Are you going to only for the enterprise customers, or are you thinking about also having, like, I don't know, maybe a community edition or a personal type of license that people can use? Just, oh, I want to see how my productivity goes even in my own life as I'm using my day-to-day, because they may have side gigs outside of their main work.
I think there's two elements here again, right? Like one is the trust, like you already mentioned, like this Microsoft Recall thing. Like nobody trusts Microsoft, at least not enough. So like everybody was outraged when they just started like randomly taking screenshots of everything you were doing, and then like, whom do you approach? And I think that the two are very related, right? Like it's much easier for me to build trust, at least initially, with B2C, like individual people I meet on the road, founders who are like quite curious for new things anyway. Building trust with enterprise is much more difficult, right? Like they want to see your SOC 2 ISO 27001 certification, and they want to host everything on their side. There's like, there's potentially more money, but it's also like so much harder to get in. And my philosophy was, sure, like that might be an interesting case like further down the road, but I actually want people that I can iterate with, right? Like I want users that I can get very fast, very early feedback from. And that is not going to be the enterprise customers, right? Like they're going to give me feedback, but they're going to tell me which specific feature they need in their case that I can't use for anybody else. And also, like, having come from enterprise software, I just wanted to do something else. So my focus is actually much more, people are just curious about their own productivity. Founders turned out to be quite useful. I have a lot of like charity founders who really care about impact and really care about where they put their time. So they value this. There's a lot of people with ADHD who try to use this because they, I think, feel not fully in control of where their time is going and feel like it's like always all over the place. So like something that helps them put a bit of structure on this seems to be quite useful. And then, so this is kind of the customers I'm focusing on. How to build trust is, I try to run this fully local, right? This would of course be best because then you have to trust nobody. But if you try to do the screenshot processing locally on your machine, it's like it drains so much energy. Older laptops just will fail. So what I ended up doing now is I allow you to bring your own AI keys, right? So if you have an AI provider that you trust, you just bring the key, it's locally encrypted, and it kind of then talks to that thing. Then you still have to trust somebody, but at least you don't have to trust me. And I also really limit in my pipeline when you want to go with me, like how long data is being stored, right? All the raw data is just not stored at all. It's only being processed. And then the processed data, even that you can set how long you want this to be stored. Longer is useful because then you can use it longer and get benefit from it. But if you have like very sensitive data or don't trust this whole thing a lot, you can also like really limit what kind of data ends up on my servers. And I hope through that it's easier to build trust and find people who are interested in it.
Yeah, that's a cool approach because also, as you mentioned, you get way more feedback from individual customers than enterprises. And one of the problems I've seen in a couple of startups that I worked with is if you manage to land that one big ticket enterprise, then you may end up in the situation where all your backlog is just replying back to that big ticket enterprise, because then your whole ARR is kind of matched up with that big ticket, and you really need to make sure that that customer is happy, and you don't have that much time to iterate with the others. And
so if you look at companies like Slack or like Notion or like similar productivity-ish tools, usually they take a similar path of like starting like individual small team, like mature from there, like get better and better, and then kind of sell into enterprise. It seems like the better way to actually build nice products.
Yeah, it's the better way to iterate. Cool. So, and now thinking more about the advices front for someone that already built a couple of companies, what advices do you have for some founder that is now thinking about starting their first company, doing their first steps?
Yeah. So I talk with a lot of people at parties often. It's like, would you ever start your own thing? Have you ever thought about this? And I think the most frequent answer I'm getting is, oh, I'm just not sure about the idea. Like once I have a good idea, then I will try this. And I just really don't think it's about the idea. Like there's like so many ideas out there. If you sit down for 2 days and do nothing else than just think about the problems in the world, and like we have infinite problems. Like problems isn't the problem. And an idea is just a solution to a problem, right? And of course you can have like good ideas, worse ideas, better ideas. But what I would do instead of like trying to find the perfect idea is find your customers, right? Like talk as soon as possible to people in an area that you're curious about and interested about. Like maybe it's AI and mining, or maybe you're super passionate about ice cream, or maybe you're super passionate about like something that somehow interests you and drives you, right? But I think it's enough to have like a rough area. And then by talking with people, by trying to figure out like what's actually a problem for you, what would you actually pay money for? I think you'll get to an idea. And then once you start building, you're going to pivot anyway and like do something else anyway. So I think it's much more start from the customer, start by like just be curious, have conversations, and yeah, go from there.
That's a good advice. Just basically start. And don't just don't obsess about the idea, because that's the one thing. You can always pivot, but you'll never be able to pivot if you don't start, right?
And like these early conversations, it's just starting. You can easily do this on the side, right? Like you don't need to like quit your job and then start doing something like this. I think everybody has a different threshold for how much confidence they need before they like go into something all in. And this is a great way to build confidence, right? Like if you already know, okay, like there's 2-3 customers out there who actually would want this if I would build this, and I think I can build this, that's much easier to then jump ship than to like, oh, I have an idea here, I think it's going to work. It's more fun maybe, but I would advise to build some confidence before.
Cool. And for young people coming out of college nowadays that are looking into this world of AI, more on computer science and our field, what advices would you have for them in terms of what they should be looking into, what the market will be looking up in the next, let's say, 1 year?
Of course, like predicting the future is always hard, but maybe it's like planning. It's going to be wrong, but it's useful. One thing I was surprised at when building this startup is like it's like a core AI application, right? Like at the core of what I'm doing, I'm processing data with AI. I then build aggregates on this. I'm like build this chatbot kind of thing. There's like the core thing you see from the outside is AI, but if I just look at the lines of code that are AI, it's like 0.1% maybe, right? Like it's like so much of software engineering, and then somewhere like called an LLM, and that's it, right? And I spent maybe like in total 1 day of like optimizing the prompt, and like I spent like half a year by now on like building this thing. So sure, like you can build like super strong AI skills on like the lowest level if you want to go into like the frontier companies and like work on the actual models. But I would guess that even the people at OpenAI, like maybe 5% work on the actual AI models, and the rest is building up product and applications and whatever. Right? So, and I've used AI a lot for software engineering. I didn't really see it significantly get better within the last like 6 months that I worked on this. I'm like very doubtful that it will replace software engineers anytime soon. So if you think software engineering and AI is something interesting for you, I think still just studying computer science or like doing internships often, of course, like going into application often and early, but like it's not like this is going to be obsolete anytime soon. I would just say like try things, stay on top of what's going on, do side projects. That's probably the best way to learn, but also just like get the hard skills of software engineering.
Yeah, I agree with you. Software engineering is probably not going anywhere anytime soon. And one of the big examples for everyone that feels like they are getting caught up in the hype and that every software engineer will be replaced by AI, just think about the simple fact. OpenAI just released their browser, their AI-powered browser. They say that everyone will be replaced by AI writing software, but they went and started with Chromium. So even they know it's hard to build software, and their AI wasn't able to build Chromium by itself. So yeah, those skills will still be valuable far much into the future that we think.
100%. Yeah.
Cool. And I think that's a great way for us to end up on a positive note. Thank you so much for coming to the podcast and having this chat with me. But before I let you go, if people want to know more about you, if people want to reach out to find you, to just have a chat, maybe figure out what your next conference is, what is the best way for them to do so?
I think the best way is to just email me at christoph@donethat.ai. Check out DoneThat.ai. I'm also pretty active on LinkedIn, so add me there. It's Christoph Hartmann. Just reach out and we'll have some fun.
That sounds great. And I'll make sure to add all of those links also to the show notes. So, Christoph, once again, thank you so much for coming to the podcast and having this chat with me. And to everyone still listening out there, keep your productivity up and see you again away from the keyboards.
Thanks, Ray. It was fun.